G'day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Battle video. In this video we are going to talk about Ultimate Clash, and basically I decided it would be a pretty cool idea to talk about how I build teams for Ultimate Clash, how I started building teams for Ultimate Clash, and basically giving some tips on how to build teams for Ultimate Clash, because although this current Ultimate Clash is a little bit easier, and you can count how many times I said Ultimate Clash in the first 2 minutes if you want to. But because this one's a little bit easier, I thought it's a good excuse to show people how to get started with building. So you're going to want to build teams of each typing: AGL, Tech, Int, Strength, and Physical. You're then going to want to make 2 different variations of each team, usually Super and Extreme class. This is a special edition Virtual Dokkan, so basically it is slightly different from the usual ones. But most Virtual Dokkan events will usually have at least 2 bosses of each typing, which is why you're going to be bringing a team for each type. Now, it is important to know that usually, so in non-special edition Virtual Dokkan Ultimate Clashes, the first boss, this one here, will share the same typing as the last boss. So, if for example the very first boss is Tech type, then the final boss will usually be Tech type. This is something that's important as it helps you with planning, because you usually want to bring at least one backup team for the final boss, because they are usually a lot tougher than the other ones. Now the reason why I build full mono teams is that it's usually easier to build full mono teams, and generally speaking it just makes life a lot more simpler to plan with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, obviously we're going to build an AGL super team, but what I'm going to show you guys is what I generally look for. So in terms of what you're looking for leader skill first. Now it doesn't always have to be a type leader skill. You don't have to have, for example, a 130% AGL type lead. What you are going to want to look for is you're going to want to look for the highest lead possible that you can fit 6 or 7 characters underneath. So I'll give you an example. We don't need to build a AGL lead team here. We could take the Pure Saiyans Vegeta and quite easily build a pretty strong Pure Saiyans team right off the bat. Now having a all AGL type lead, like the units I'm showing you, does generally help. What I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using a 100% type lead for this run, and when I build all these teams I will show you a successful completion of this event. But when I build all these teams I will also not be using any LR units. This is just so I can show you guys I won't be using any summonable LRs. I'll be using mainly free-to-play units. I'll also try and avoid DFE TURs, Easy Aid TURs. I'm going to try and show you guys a much more beginner friendly team overall. But yes, leader skill is important. Generally I suggest 100% or above if you are kind of trying to run like the bare minimum. If you can get a 100% type lead, then you should definitely be okay, especially for this Virtual Dokkan, but you should be okay for future Virtual Dokkans. It's going to depend on the unit you stick under that lead. Generally I like to work around it, so like I said, picking up the Pure Saiyans Vegeta in this situation is a great way to build a really strong, really powerful team without the pressure or the innate pressure of having to like find a 130% lead. If you have the type leads, then definitely run them, as I highly advise it. The next thing you're going to want to look for is the ability to stun and the ability to seal. These are both very important mechanics that will be relevant for more or less bosses during a Virtual Dokkan. A lot of the times each boss will have some kind of gimmick or some kind of strategy. Usually, for example, it will involve sealing the boss because they can fire multiple super attacks, or stunning the boss because they can constantly regen. You are going to want to make sure that whenever you build a team, you include at least one of these units. If you include at least one of these units, then generally speaking you can be quite fine, and you won't really face any issues when you are taking on the stages. Now remember, because we are building a team of each type, you want to generally include one of each type on each team. Now remember that you can, of course, still have issues. For example, on Super Strength, I don't necessarily have the greatest sealing units. This can happen. Try and build around it as best you can. Try and remember how to use your categories to your advantage. And if necessary, you can always do what I like to call is a little bit of a side swipe. So for example, in situations where a unit is very dangerous, but they are pure sand, you can use things like the Tech Kalifla, who always dodges pure sands, as a very helpful unit to obviously help you prep for everything. So another little tip to building teams is that there are 2 great free-to-play teams that you can use to pretty much clear the first round every time. And these teams aren't that much effort. You can easily get them with just a little bit of event grinding. I have guides to them on my channel. They are the Ginyu Force and Team Bardock. Now, for all intents and purposes, you can very easily use these teams to help you clear the first round of Virtual Dokkan Ultimate Clash. Now, I do suggest in certain situations saving whichever of these units you can to help fulfill requirements elsewhere. So if, for example, you really need a sealer for your extreme tech team, try and avoid taking Gildo for the Ginyu team. You should generally have enough side rotations and enough side options to replace him with. And generally the first round is so easy, you can actually just use one less character. Even having just one, if you run this Ginyu team, and you have just one Cyberman in the team, you will handle this stage more than fine still. So I highly suggest that you take a look at which unit you can carry across. But generally speaking, using these free-to-play teams in the very, very first round generally guarantees you not only clearance, but it means you can save a lot more of your more valuable units. For example, this first fight's obviously against a tech unit. Because we're using the Team Bardock team to take them out, we can actually save another int team for later on, which becomes really valuable when sometimes things just don't go your way. Maybe you don't set it up properly, maybe you run into a little bit of issues. So it is something that's very, very important to take note of. So yes, it is super important when you're building these teams that you make sure that you do so. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move through each of the different typings, and we're going to pick units for the teams. Like I said, I'm going to avoid trying to pick DFE EZAs. I'm going to try and avoid picking summonable LR units, and generally speaking, I will try and give some kind of description as to why I'm purposefully picking a certain unit over another one. So yes, that is it for AGL. Obviously, in terms of great free-to-play selections for the tech team, looking at units like Mighty Mask, for example, really fantastic unit. Obviously, recently kind of just got his awakening and EZA and everything on global. So a very good option. Units like the EZ8 Vegito, also a fantastic option. Candy Vegito is a fantastic option. Lots of stuff. So really, really good selections. Honestly, if I could pick any, I would say the free-to-play Candy Vegito is probably your best option. And then I would say that the Mighty Mask is also a very, very solid option. On the inside, you've got great units like the SBR Goku. You've got the Yardrak Goku. You've got the Android 18 and Krillin, although I don't really suggest bringing them, but their orbs are pretty useful. Giru is a great sealer. The Great Sandman is really good in fights against extreme type units. Just in general, quite a few solid options from that perspective. So there are some really great int options there that you can pick up that will really, really help you out. Strength is a little bit trickier. There are some really great options like the 1000 Day Goku, but obviously for beginners, units like Pan, Strength Vegito, all of these units are going to be more effective than others. Krillin is a great option because of his 50% damage reduction when when under the effect of guard, and just some very, very decent units. The Trunks, the Super Strike Trunks is great. The Pepe Gals Rubrian is great. There's some really, really good units overall. So obviously when you're selecting, it is just important to try your very best to choose units that are going to be helpful to you. On the super physical side, there's a lot of great options. The Great Sandman 1 and 2, the Legendary Master Roshi. There are tons of pretty solid options that you can utilize, which will definitely be able to help you. So, like, you don't need to feel like you have to have a lot of the current units to do Virtual Dokkan Ultimate Clash, which I think is a very good sign. Like I said, the most important thing is just to make sure that you cover your bases. You want to make sure that you have a stunner, you want to make sure you have a sealer, and you want to make sure that you have a decent leader skill. As long as you have a decent leader skill of at least 100%, you should be okay. Now, you will struggle with only 100% in the normal Virtual Dokkan Ultimate Clashes, but you can still make it work. It may just require you to do 1 or 2 attempts, but you can definitely make it work. So I would entirely suggest you to do your best and to try and select obviously units that work for you and units that can get things done for you. But like I say, it's not really, all entirely like one way inclined. You can 100% do things with free-to-play units. They'll cover a lot of your bases, and they'll cover a lot of the utility you need, because generally you can get a decent free-to-play unit in different options and different ways. So don't feel the need to function or run a certain unit or do a certain thing. You can just choose the appropriate units to cover all of your bases. On the inside, it's a bit weaker free-to-play wise. I think it's probably the weakest category free-to-play wise. I think Int lacks a lot of the utility and definitely the free-to-play lead skills that some of the other ones don't lack. Yeah, I think that's its biggest problem, at least from inside. And then I think overall your best options are going to be to kind of look at possibly picking up some of the Battlefield LRs. Now there's some noticeable ones, like there's some ones that will really help you out in terms of Battlefield LRs. Metal Cooler is a great option because of his link set and his leader skill being pretty decent. There's also the Deborah and Babidi, who are really, really good. And there's, of course, the Ginyu Force, the physical Ginyu Force. I actually suggest saving the physical Ginyu Force now, since they've gotten their EZA, as they generally are going to be a very, very good choice. But these Battlefield LRs are only going to become available to you once you start to systematically clear Ultimate Clash. So, you can use them in your run, but generally speaking, it's obviously quite difficult to use them if you don't have them. So you kind of have to start beating Ultimate Clash to really get Ultimate Clash units. But they do still provide themselves to be very, very useful. Just a heads up, of course, that what you do want to do is once you have selected your teams, you do want to make sure that you have units of each type. So you'll see I'm selecting all of the types, and I am clicking the seal skill so that I can make sure that each of my teams has a sealer. If I don't have a sealer, I am then trying to pick one up. So that is probably the thing that I can suggest the most, that you do want to obviously try and grab and make sure that you cover those bases. Same with stunning. You want to make sure that you have stunning, you want to make sure that you have sealing, you want to make sure that you have all of these mechanisms. So when you are double checking things, just make sure that obviously you've managed to cover your bases and get the appropriate units that you need. Once you've done that, you should be more than fine, and so I don't foresee there being any major issues for you overall. But yeah, that is pretty much it when it comes to anything really with Ultimate Clash. Once you've done that, you can just start to fill out your teams. Remember to make sure that you have 7 units per team, and you need 2 leader skills. So you need to make sure that you have at least 2 units to use as leads, because if you don't, then you are going to run into issues, because again, the units that you have need to be able to fill up all of your bases, and because you don't take friend leads, you take 2 leaders for your own team. So if you have a combination of leader skills, try and aim for on average 100% overall. You can not do that, but it is highly advised. Also, just another follow-up, that you do want to look at units beyond sealing and stunning. So units that seal, units that heal, not seal, units that heal, units that have evasion, units that have damage reduction are also highly suggested, as they can just help you kind of circumvent some of the gimmicks that the bosses have. But it's entirely up to you guys, and once you're comfortable with your team selection, just remember to constantly tweak it. So once you've managed to finish your team selection, remember that whenever you get a very good new unit, or whenever you get a good unit, you're going to want to make sure that you obviously go through and maybe pick them up. Try and make sure that you're always updating your Virtual Dokkan Ultimate Clash box. I know I've been called out once or twice where I've basically not like checked my box. I've not updated it, and I've realized, why is my extreme physical team really struggling? And meanwhile, I haven't added in the fact that I got Final Form Cooler as a type lead, or that I picked up Angel Golden Frieza or something like that. And so try and do your best to stay up to date with your team, and just obviously keep everything as productive as possible and as updated as possible. If you do that, you'll be more than fine, so don't worry too much about it. But yeah, and also obviously links, all those sort of things, super important. They always will be. It's not something you can just circumvent, it's not something you can just ignore. Links, all those sorts of mechanics are very, very important, so do bear that in mind when building your team. Don't build a whole super strength team, but the entire team is just one Beerus, one Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, one Jiren, one one Frost. Like, try and build your team as best you can. Try and make a team that functions well and shares some decent links, or take a support or something to make that team run. So if you are going to take disparaging units, try and take units that run well together. And yeah, stuff like healing, stuff like orb changing, it always helps out, especially when you're running at these lower leads. Units that you have dupes in, those also help out, because you're then able to keep everything kosher with your lowest skill sets and things like that. So yeah, guys, just keep doing your best, and you'll be more than fine. Okay, so yeah, honestly, more than happy, and I just suggest you guys really try your best and do your best, and you'll be okay. So other than that, the only real suggestions I can make in terms of Ultimate Clash is to read the bosses. Make sure that the bosses are, how can I say, up to speed, that the bosses are, you're aware of their abilities, the gimmicks they have. You can watch my run-throughs that I do of the events, and you can see what I've run and what I've used and how I've countered the bosses, and hopefully that will give you guys the ability to make sure that you flesh things out. So obviously it's up to you, but I do just suggest going through all the information, bring up the Dokkan wiki, look at the boss's mechanics, and really just be aware of what you are facing, and that will really keep things good for you. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I do obviously appreciate like everything that you guys have given, and the support and all that. We're now going to watch my victory using the exact units that I chose. So we'll watch me wrap everything up here. Just a heads up on the Goku. He is a bit of a DPS race at the end, because of the fact that you want to avoid his one-hit mechanic. You should be fine. It's not that intense a DPS race, but just a heads up that you do want to obviously keep that in mind. Now with that being said, obviously we have finished the Virtual Dokkan Ultimate Clash. This is obviously my second time. You can watch my first playthrough with just my normal teams in the video that's been linked in the top right hand corner. Now I'm just going to quickly run through all of the units, and you can see that it's obviously every single unit that we have. So pretty solid stuff, all the ones we chose, and very, very simple. So don't too worries about it. Bit of an issue on Super Vegeta, but that was about it. And then a bit of an issue on the Majin Vegeta, but overall we managed to get things done. Basically just couldn't really get things set up properly, which is why I ended up struggling a little bit with that. But yeah, overall, pretty decent time and pretty smooth run. But thanks guys for watching, and bye!